Well, this is still a very active scene. I want you to take a look over my shoulder. What you see is the Michigan State Police Crime Lab and the Bay County Sheriff's Department recreating this crime scene.
But now there's a growing concern that many of them may be defective. And that caught the attention of transportation officials across the country, including here in Michigan. Well, a tough day for people in parts of Illinois after a devastating tornado touched down last night.
Well, Carrie, we're talking about a can of spray paint being used to commit a crime.
Over the past several days, the Upper Peninsula has been hammered with snow. Take a look. Where I'm standing, about 8 inches. People coping with the cold here in Saginaw by staying out of it. Reporting in Saginaw, Gino Vicci, WNEM TV5.
Well, spring training is underway, but it's not all fun and games for one major league squad. The Milwaukee Brewers have banned all high fives.
What? That's our morning talker.
There were originally 3 schools involved: Stanford, the University of Pennsylvania, and the University of Michigan. Now there are more than 100 schools and 6.5 million users worldwide. Well, the obvious question is, why is this happening? I mean, what happened to the days of studying and cramming all night to get a good grade? Well, the many lawsuits that have nearly bankrupted and caused the village to lose its insurance policy all began because of trying to protect those names of the reserve officers. There are many of you out there who may criticize this story for teaching students how to cheat. But with the numbers as high as they are, experts say they already know.
And police have identified a teenager hit and killed by a car. Authorities say 17-year-old Levanta Morgan was killed March 13th.
It's outrageous.
It's just nonsensical.
I don't know what it is, but it seems like a guy's for hate.
Strong reaction outside the Capitol building in Lansing.
I mean, it doesn't make sense.
Leo Romo, a Saginaw native and outspoken supporter of the LGBT community, says today's peaceful protest is all about a proposed bill called the Religious Freedom Restoration Act.
People in Michigan, gays are not, we are legally discriminated here.
Romo and others, including Lapeer resident Zach Mercer, believe it's a clear attack on their civil rights.
I've considered leaving the state recently because of all of the things that are wrong with this state when it comes to the issues on LGBT rights.
The bill, also known as RFRA, is touted as an anti-discriminatory measure to protect religious rights. But to these protesters, it's unfair and unjust.
They're absolutely putting out false things.
On the opposite side of the Capitol building, we met up with State Senator Rick Jones, who happens to be on the opposite side of this contentious issue.
If a nurse is called in and said you're going to be in a procedure and do an abortion, should a nurse have to do that if she doesn't believe in killing somebody?
Senator Jones insists opponents of this bill are simply exaggerating their claims. He says similar measures are already in place in more than a dozen states.
But the lies that are being put out right now on Facebook and other social media are just that. They're lies.
Meanwhile, protesters here disagree and say the state of Michigan has been a pioneer in so many ways historically. But now they fear our state is falling behind.
It would be advantageous just to throw this bill out and continue to progress forward.
I don't understand why we're going back in time to an age where it's okay to discriminate against another person.
Coping with the cold. I do it almost every day, and it never gets any easier, especially when temperatures drop farther and farther below zero. We could all use advice on how to stay warm, so we wanted to know how you cope with the cold. So we hit the streets to find out some of your secrets. We stopped at our usual locations when we look for interviews, like gas stations and some nearby neighborhoods. It was nearly impossible to find someone willing to talk. Hey, but eventually we did, but that canine wouldn't go on camera. But in all seriousness, city streets were deserted. With temperatures feeling like 10 below, neighborhoods resembled a ghost town. After a few minutes walking around, I literally froze.
Gino, ready for your stand-up. Frozen again.
Okay, not really. When we did finally find some people to ask them some of the ways they cope with the cold, stopping to interview with me wasn't one of them. Understandably, those who were willing to interview were only willing as long as they could keep moving.
So how are people coping with the cold here in Saginaw? By staying out of it. Reporting in Saginaw, Gino Vicci, WNEM TV5.
Who can forget the classic film and sequel to Back to the Future, starring Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd? In the Robert Zemeckis film, the duo travels back to the future again to right now, 2015. Ironically, the 1989 thriller had some pretty interesting takes on what we might see in 2015. And it makes you wonder if some of today's technology companies were paying close attention to the film's out-of-this-world gadgets. Take, for instance, the scene where Michael J. Fox, playing Marty McFly, is at the dinner table wearing some pretty high-tech looking glasses. Look familiar? Those look a lot like Google's invention, the wearable computer called Google Glass. Another scene, McFly makes a video call. Back in 1989, it looked pretty futuristic, but today, Skyping or communicating on Apple's FaceTime are pretty common. Then there's biometric technology. In Back to the Future 2, we see several scenes where a thumbprint was used to access electronic devices, including a front door. Today, your phone, your tablet, and your front door can all be accessed with your fingerprint. Speaking of those electronic devices, computer tablets seem to be pretty common in the film. Hard to imagine what our world would be like today without one of Apple's signature products, the iPad. But aside from the technology, there was another interesting prediction: a baseball team in Miami. In 1989, there was no such team. It wasn't until '93 the Florida Marlins franchise came to be, and then in 2011 the team changed its name to the Miami Marlins. The team Miami loses to...
What did you just say? I said I wish I could go back to the beginning of the season. Put some money on the Cubbies.
The Chicago Cubs win the World Series. That's still yet to be seen.
Hey, Marty! Marty!
And finally, there's one part of the film that Michiganders likely wish was true.
Where we're going, we don't need roads.
Ah, yes, we still need those. But hey, perhaps the reason for our crumbling roads? According to Back to the Future 2, we didn't need them. Reporting back in the future, Gino Vicci, WNEM TV5.
When it rains a lot, pretty hard.
When it rains, it's been pouring for this World War II veteran, even inside his home. That's because 92-year-old Ignacio Cantu desperately needs a new roof. The problem? Cantu is living on a fixed income and simply can't afford it.
I don't have that kind of money.
Raquel Cortez is his granddaughter. She says this old vet never asks anyone for anything, but she says someone who served their country with pride and dignity like her grandfather shouldn't have to ask for something as simple as a roof over his head. That's why she says the family has been searching endlessly to find a way to help pay for a new roof.
I mean, any given day it could turn into something like a real catastrophe with the shape that the roof is in.
But after months of searching for programs for veterans, no luck.
At this point in time, we're waiting on approval for the grant, and that's not even guaranteed if they'll help him fix the roof.
So we wanted to find out if anyone would be willing to help this hero. We reached out to viewers on Facebook. We made dozens of calls. The response was overwhelming. Oh, and Raquel, guess what? No more waiting for that grant. Your grandfather is getting a brand new roof. The rescue squad was there when crews from Wimsat Materials and Herbert Roofing showed up at their door earlier this afternoon. Take a look.
I know you've been working really hard, to get this done for your grandfather.
Extremely frustrating. Huge burden off our shoulders.
Your grandfather gave so much for the freedoms that we're able to enjoy.
When we told Cantu about getting a new roof, he was almost in disbelief, wondering why complete strangers would volunteer their time and money for him. Well, one of those guys who stepped up was Paul Grigorchak from Wimsat Materials. Turns out he's a veteran too. Grigorchak says he was moved by the family's persistence and just wanted to help out a fellow soldier.
I bet you if he could, he would probably be up there doing it himself.
What started as another day of stress trying to get answers for Raquel turned into a day of comfort, knowing her grandfather would get the help he deserves.
Like I said, it's a huge burden off our shoulders to know that it's going to get fixed and it's going to be safe for them to live in. It's huge. Thank you.